Hi everyone, Paul here again. Sorry it's been so long since I've posted anything on my channel. Sometimes life gets in the way and have other things that I was doing. Right now, this little video is going to be about taking care of the Brightwork and the varnish top rails that I have on Edonismo. When I was designing the boat, a lot of people told me not to put any Brightwork on. They said it was a lot of maintenance and a lot to take care of. And of course I didn't listen, and of course they were right. So basically the only Brightwork I have is the top rail is varnished. And unfortunately, I didn't realize it's pretty much an ongoing process to keep it looking nice. Recently had the boat waxed and detailed, and it looks beautiful. And then when I looked at the Brightwork, it was in definite need of a little attention. So I decided to see if I could find someone that could do it professionally the first time and get it back to where it needed to be. Unfortunately, in this area, in the St. Pete area of Florida, there's not that many people that do varnishing and Brightwork. The few people that do that I found are backlogged some 4, 5, and even 6 months. And the prices that they wanted were way out of what I would consider acceptable to do that kind of job. It is pretty labor intensive. It's the problem. You need the right weather and the right preparation. And so it is kind of time consuming. So I realized now that I had to do this on my own. So I went to my YouTube favorites and did some research on how to do it, what their best products were. And I settled on a company called Total Boat, which has quite a few products for varnishing and painting and anything to do with that type of work on your boat. They have several videos, how-tos, and a lot of really good advice. And so after doing some of that, I'm going to post a little of what I've learned here, some of the products that I've used and how to use them. And I'm not going to show you the whole thing. Basically, I took a little test section just so I could try it out and see how it worked and what was really going to be involved. What I found is it is going to take quite a bit of time to get it done right. Prep work is really important, and then there is the weather considerations and a lot of factors that can sometimes drag the project out a little bit longer than you would hope for. So anyway, I hope you like this video. Take a look at the products. If you have any questions about what I've used and why, feel free to leave a comment down below and let me know what you think. And if you have any better suggestions on how you would do it better, I would love to hear that. And if you do like my videos, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so that you'll get future notices of other videos that I'll be putting out. And I keep promising you, and soon, once I get retired and get on the water, we'll be doing some really nice travel videos of the Bahamas, Caribbean, French Polynesia, Australia, New Zealand, Asia, and quite a few fun things to do. So please like, subscribe, and I hope you enjoy the video. Thank you. I thought I would start by going over some of the products that I used in preparation for my project. These are just ones that I selected. You might find others that you like better. Obviously, when you're working with varnish and other chemicals, you want to protect the areas around the boat, other teak and painted surfaces. So any plastic film would work. I use this little 4mm plastic that I found on Amazon for fairly cheap that I put around the project. What is important though, and I put a lot of research in, is most people use the blue masking tape, or the painter's tape as it's called. Scotch makes a one for exterior surfaces that's yellow, and it holds up much better outside in the sun and the rain. It can be put on and off several times. It'll last up to 10 days if you have to leave the project for a while, and leaves absolutely no residue when you take it off. Great product. I highly recommend it. As far as the sandpaper, they recommend, there's a lot of different things that I've read online, but basically they say start with 220 to get the heavy stuff off, and then to finish up before you actually do the varnishing, finish up with a 400 grit, which will take out the fine lines and smooth the surface out better. These are just sheets that I'll cut for the regular sanding block. If you'll notice the rolls next to them, they're the same sandpaper, same 220 and 400 grit. The difference with these is they're flexible and they have an adhesive backing on them so that when you put it on a curved sanding block, they will stick to it and make it conform to the shape. So as you're sanding curved surfaces, it makes it a little bit easier to work rounded edges and various different shapes. You'll see these to the right here coming up. There's these what they call soft sanders that I found online. They're really good for any kind of non-flat surface that you might have that you're varnishing. It has everything from indentations to curves to specific designs. They've pretty much covered everything you could possibly have on your boat. And all you do is you cut to length that curved soft sandpaper, put that on with the adhesive backing, and then very easy to work your rounded edges. As far as the sanding block, instead of using a traditional hard block, I found this one online, which is has two different densities. The blue and black are different densities, and it makes it a little bit easier to control the sanding application and take off as much or as little product as you would like. Very handy product, and I highly recommend that also. So after the area is prepped and sanded, now it's time to get down to the real nitty-gritty of the work. You have to make sure that the area that you're varnishing is totally clean and free of any dust or particles. So I started with mineral spirits and a rag and wiped down the surface that was going to be varnished to make sure it was nice and clean. And again, I selected the Total Boat products, the Gleam 2.0 varnish. It's a real spar varnish. It has very good ratings, holds up very well, dries fairly quickly, so you can put 2 to 3 coats on in a day. And you also don't have to sand in between. You can, if you let it dry, sand in between applications, but it's not necessary. The mineral spirits are to clean the surface before you apply the varnish, and they're also to clean the brushes in between applications and for storage. The pure gold, the tack cloths are one of the final things you do before you varnish. You just take the tacky rag and wipe down the rails and make sure there's absolutely no particles, dust, or anything on that would get trapped in the varnish. And probably one of the most important things is the brushes that you used. Total Boat recommends that you use natural hair brushes. They sell these here are badger hair brushes, which hold the product very well, hold up, and highly recommended for the application. I thought I'd start by giving you a little view of what it looked like before. You'll notice that there are several areas that are worn down to the bare wood. Especially the seams on the edges are very vulnerable to water intrusion, and they tend to fade and fail first on the rails. From the moment varnish is put on outside, the sun, the salt water, everything is trying to break it down almost immediately from the time it cures. So it does have to be maintained on a regular basis to keep it looking right. Everyone I've talked to says there's really not much you can do to keep it from happening. The best you can do is slow it down a little and try to stay on top of it and do little areas as they become necessary so that you don't have what I have now, which is a big project, which I have to pretty much redo the entire top rail. So hopefully after I get it back in shape, I'll be able to stay on top of it a little bit better and it won't get to look quite this bad. But I just thought you'd like to see what the before looked like. I thought I would spare you watching me sand for an hour, so I sped up the video here for a little bit. Maybe after I do a few more of these sections, I might get to do that speed in real life. But for now, I'm a little bit slower and had to speed up the video. I started with the side rounded edges, which were the hardest to get smoothed out. That's the ones that had the biggest rubs that were all the way down to the bare wood. So with those soft sanding blocks, it made it quite a bit easier. I started with the 220 grit sandpaper. Worked all the bare spots so I could bring up the wood grain again and get the nice teak color shining through. And just made sure I didn't take off too much material or change the shape of the curvature at all. So then after the 220 grit, I switched over to the 400 grit. And that's a little bit finer. It takes out a little bit of the scratches, smooths out the surface, and gets it a little bit closer to prep for the final varnishing. Then the final thing I did was the flat surfaces, which the flat sanding block and again the 220 grit to start. That was pretty easy and straightforward, not much to that. Just taking off the old varnish layer and getting it prepped for the new varnish. Again, at the very end, you switch over to the 400 grit for the fine lines to get those out and prepare the surface for the varnishing. So that part went pretty smoothly. After the sanding is complete, now it's time to clean the surface and get it really prepped for the application of the varnish. I started with the mineral spirits and a clean rag and started wiping the surface liberally with the mineral spirits to try to get any kind of residue off completely. When you first apply the mineral spirits, it gets a nice shine to it, and got really excited that it was looking really good. And then after a few minutes, as the mineral spirits evaporate, sort of leaves a little bit of a white hazy layer behind, which I wasn't expecting. So at first I thought that I might have done something wrong, but come to find out that's totally normal. And once the varnish is applied, that goes away and the shine comes right back. So you'll notice here as I'm applying it, it looks nice and shiny. And then as it evaporates, you'll see the haze start to form. which basically means it's nice and clean and is not really a problem. So I learned a little something there, and I'm learning as I go. This is the very first time I've ever done this. This is a test section that I'm doing, and came out pretty well, and but I'm still learning as I go. The final prep work before the application of the varnish is to go over the surface with a tack cloth. That's that Duragold cloth that I showed you in the beginning. It's basically just a sticky cloth that'll pill up any kind of dust or dirt or anything that was left behind from the preparation. It's very important to keep using clean edges of it, so I turn it over and flip it inside out to make sure that you get a clean surface all the time. Yeah, it's very easy. Wipes nice and, even though it's a sticky substance, it actually goes on nice and smooth as you're rubbing the surface and gets any type of imperfection off the railing. Anything that's left behind once you varnish will be there for good, so you want to make sure the surface is really well prepared. As with the sanding portion of the video, I sped this one up a little bit too, just to save you the trouble of watching me varnish for 20 minutes. But actually I've only sped it up twice, so you'll see it really didn't take me that long to do this one little section. It goes on pretty easily. Total Boat recommends that for your first coat that you thin the product out about a 25%. This makes it a little bit easier to apply, makes the product a little bit thinner so that it will get into all the small cracks and crevices, and it'll give a little bit more coverage on that very first coat. Coats after that, as a preference, you can use it full strength. I found that actually having it thin just a little bit was a little bit easier application for me. They recommend, instead of using just the mineral spirits to thin it out, that they have a product that is specially made as a thinner. The main difference is that the thinning agent is a little slower drying, so that it lasts a little bit longer as you're doing the application. I started with the edges, pretty much made sure I didn't apply too much, tried to make sure there were no runs or drips, and then finished on the top and feathered it all in. I found that it went on very, very easily. It's pretty much self-leveling, so any slight imperfections as it dries will smooth out itself. It is very important not to put it on too much. You don't want to get too many runs or drips or brush marks in there. Those boar's hair brushes worked really, really well. They stay nice and soft, but yet they have a firmness to them that's easy for the application. They hold a lot of the varnish, so it's very easy to apply. So I highly recommend those products. They're a little bit more expensive than the cheaper ones you could buy, but they still work really, really well. Some people say that they use foam brushes, but everything I've read says that the foam brush will tend to induce air bubbles into the varnish and can cause you some problems. So they really recommend the actual boar's hair brushes if you can find them. The width, I use the 1 inch because of the rounded edges. It just made it a little bit easier for the application. But depending on your project, different size brushes will work differently for different applications. And here's the finished project. For comparison, you'll see the unfinished section to the left, and to the right is the section that I just completed. I think it came out pretty well for a first try, and I was pretty happy with the results. Hopefully you've got some information from it that's helpful to you too. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up, like, and subscribe. And hopefully I'll be having other videos out here in the very near future. Appreciate you watching, and hope you have a great day.